What's up, everybody? It's Dan, Binder Boneyard, coming at you from someplace different. This is the spare room, back bedroom, office, other TV room that we got here at the house. Some technical difficulties at the shop, so I had to do this here. So I apologize to Brad, my engineer, because I'm holding this microphone and he's probably going to hear some weird noises and feedback. And I apologize to everybody watching on YouTube because I am ugly. So anyway, thank you everybody for watching the video series. Been trying some new stuff. It's been working out pretty good. A lot of feedback. That really is it's helpful when you guys tell me what's up and how you like it or don't like it or whatever. One of the things I ask is, I know a lot of you guys are on social media, and when you're on Facebook and you see somebody asking questions about something, a lot of these videos have information that people need. If you want to just refer them to the video, that is, that's super helpful too, because not only does it help my watch hours and things like that, but it also helps people, help spread the word and get the knowledge out there that people need. So anyway, I really appreciate it. You can support me on Patreon at Binder Boneyard Patreon. You can subscribe on Instagram, monthly subscription. It's pretty inexpensive, but every dollar helps. So I appreciate all of it. So today we're going to jump right in with everybody's, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people ask for a D series podcast about D series, and not to be confused with D model, which is the 37 to 39 or 40 International. We're talking about the D series 69 to 75. So that, even though it was only 5 or 6 years there, they covered a lot of ground. So we'll get going. I mean, there were some big changes from the 68, which is the, like in the last podcast, the round body style, it's completely different looking, just everything about the C series that ended in 68 and then the beginning of the D series. We commonly refer to the D's as the square bodies, not to be confused with the Chevy square body stuff, but just for reference, when we're talking to somebody on the phone, because they'll call and they say, I have a 69, and then you get to talking to them and it turns out they actually have a 68. Because a lot of times with International, they were titled when they were sold. So there were a lot of 68s that got left on the lot and got titled as 69s. So the 69s that came out, there were some definite design differences besides being square. Completely different interiors. More of the Scout 2 style dash with the rectangle gauge openings instead of the round. More functionality. The ignition switch got moved to the middle of the console or middle of the dash. Some of the knobs got moved to the left-hand side, so your headlights and your wipers were right next to each other. Whereas on the C series, you had your ignition on one side and your headlights, and then wipers were on the other side. So the layout of the dash, the D series, was a little bit better. Completely, like, it was all new. Everything about the 69 was a complete departure from the 68, except the frames. The frames on the D series up to 73 are suspiciously like the C series frames. The layout, the holes, all that stuff. The only change that I've ever really noticed is around the steering box. And that is about it. Use the same spring bushings, uses the same spring lengths, uses, so much of the same stuff from C to D. But so the 69s, they had the long skinny rectangle marker lights like a Scout 800 would have had. And like I talked about before, there's that parts sharing. So you see the marker lights on the 69, same as what came out on the 70 Scout 800. So, whether that was intentional, of course it was intentional, but, I think they just, they were sharing parts because that was what they had to do to save some money. One of my favorite upgrades of the 69s is 8-lug axles. They finally got smart and went to the 8-lug that everybody else had already gone to. So they got rid of that big 6 crazy pattern and went to 8. So that was a good update. They did, the interiors got nicer, the door hinge design changed, all of the interior, they really took it to the next level. All the controls are in the, they function better, they're a little bit more legible. The dash was actually a padded dash instead of the previous steel dash with a piece of foam glued to it. They feel bigger inside than a C series. And of course by 69, the Travelall got even bigger. You could fold the seat up in a Travelall and put a 4x8 sheet of plywood in it and still have 1.5 feet of room at the back up against the tailgate. Like, just massive. The Travelalls just had so much room inside. The power back window setup got better. The dual tanks were less of an afterthought, especially in the Travelalls. Travelettes and pickups. The driver's side fender fill on them just was a better layout. It took fuel better, all that stuff. A lot of the indicator lights got moved to the dash panel instead of being separate standalone lights like you saw in the C series. But yeah, just a general difference in layout. You saw, the upholstery change. It got way more cushy and more padded. Unless you had a base model with a bunch of vinyl, then, vinyl can only be so cushy. But just the difference between base model and upper model it's way more than just some chrome. The early 70s, they had that single bar in the middle of the grill, the trim, they had a big 5-inch wide piece of trim across the bottom with the spaghetti trim that went, halfway around. You saw the air conditioning became standard, or a factory installed deal instead of a dealer setup. But the 69s are the only year that I've seen with the blue and red or blue and orange indicator panel for the heater controls. I didn't see that in any other ones. And also the aluminum dash bezel, I think, was a 69 and early 70 only item that I've seen. So, 69, that's a lot of those features. And then you get into 70, where the marker lights changed into the small rectangles like you saw on Scout 2s. So you see that change. The dash changes a little bit to the uncolored heater controls. Really, that's about it there. As far as drivetrains go, in the 69, 70s, all the way up to 75, 74, you saw the AMC engine option. So you had the 232 or the 258 was 6 cylinders that were available. And then in the bigger trucks, or not bigger trucks, but in 73, you saw the AMC 401 came out briefly. I think maybe even into 74, but it didn't last a long time. But anyway, so you had the AMC option. You still had the 3 on the column, or 4 or 5 speed, and you started to see more of the 5 speeds in the D series. The early 69 and 70s were still running the NP202, or the TC141, if you're watching. So they switched to that, or they kept that going. But really, the 8 lugs, the brakes got a little bit bigger. Power steering was more common again over the C series. Is really not a ton of difference between 69 and 70. And then into 71, you saw the grill change to the mesh or egg crate plastic grill insert, with the emblem on the lower right. That's the only year of that grill, that 71 egg crate. So that style is what changed the hood latch. And then there were some minor changes inside, like almost unnoticeable differences. Colors mostly changed in that. Every year there were different colors. They were close, but like one year would be 69, it would be yellow. 70, it was sunrise yellow. And then 71, it was sunburst yellow. And they're all like within 2 shades of each other. So you saw those updates. Really, like I said, 71 was kind of the last of that kind of style, because in 72, when the Scout 2 came out in 72, the dash changed. There became an indicator bar that lit up to show you what the knobs were, where the headlight switch was, where the wipers were, whatever. So then the dash got a little flatter. The dash pad changed. The glove box door changed. Just the style of the dash. The AC vents, if you had them, moved from down low to up high on the dash. The AC system got revamped. So there's some differences there. 72, you saw, not much mechanical change. It was mostly cosmetics. And then speaking of that, the grill changed. You had the plastic insert went away, and the turned into the full horizontal bars with a divider in the middle that broke up those horizontal bars. Little things like that mechanically they didn't change much, but cosmetically they changed a few things here and there. Different mirror styles came out. But yeah, not a lot, but again, color changes, nothing earth shattering. And as far as the models go, they changed the numbering. So, they went from 1000s to 1010s, which a 1010 is the light half ton with the torsion bar FA9 front end. The 1100 would be a half ton with an I-beam, or you could have been half ton with 4-wheel drive, because in 73, then they changed the numbering again to, you could have had an 1110, which I believe is a half ton 4-wheel drive, whereas an 1100 was just half ton 2-wheel drive with an I-beam. And then same with the 3/4 tons. You had the 1200 in 69 and 70, and then you had the 1210 that started in 71, and then same 1300, 1310, all the way up to the 1500s. So then, you had the 392s, the IH engine options were 304, 345, 392, pretty much standard option. You saw a lot of 392s end up in the half tons. For whatever reason, everybody wanted a 392. even though they got terrible mileage and were fragile. Something about what people wanted. I don't know. But so anyway, so there's, the transmissions, like I said, 3-speed, 4-speed, 5-speed. That's the other thing. In 72, they switched from Borg Warner automatics to Chrysler 727s. So now you have, the Borg Warners, they had their downshift, kick down solenoid was a button underneath the pedal. So you could adjust that to kick down, when you really needed it to or whatever. Borg Warners were, iron case, heavy, kind of, I don't know. They had some weird things about them, but I had one in my Travelette and I towed some heavy stuff around the country and it seemed to hold up okay. So, I didn't have any problems with the Borg Warner. The problem with Borg Warners nowadays is the cost of having them rebuilt and also finding parts. Parts for them are getting harder to find. So, a lot of people are getting rid of the Borg Warners and swapping in the 727, which came out in 72. And that's like they had the kick down linkage that went from the carb to the valve body. They were all aluminum case. They were Chrysler internals, so they were heavy duty and easy to get parts for. Still are today. 727s are still a very decent trans, and so a lot of people like them. I'm a fan. I don't mind the 727s when they're built right. So that, and then the difference between like a D series or C series and a Scout is the transfer case is divorced. So the transfer case rides separately on its own mount behind the transmission. So that was another, I think, money saving or line time saving thing from International. And I think Dodge was doing it too. I mean, they definitely didn't invent it, but if you ordered a 2-wheel drive, there was just a cross member with a carrier bearing. But if you wanted a 4-wheel drive, there was a cross member that the transfer case hung from. And then the tonneau cover had a hole in it for the shift lever. Like, it was a real easy change to go back and forth from 2-wheel drive to 4-wheel drive. I shouldn't say easy. I mean, the cross member that the carrier bearing was hung on was riveted to the frame. So it took a little bit of torching to get a 4-wheel drive cross member in there. But the frames are already set up for that 4-wheel drive cross member. So it's not like you're, having to go do a bunch of fabrication and stuff. It's all right there. So, and then that's the other thing is in 71, you saw the NP205 come in. They phased out that 202 and the NP205, the TC142 came in and became the standard transfer case for them, till the end, until 75. So 73, now we've standardized. We've got the 727, you got the 205, the Dana 60 rear or Dana 44 rear, depending on your model. The 44 front, you saw the big knuckle 44 front. That had been around for a while, but I saw more of those in the D series. So they had the big, bigger axle shafts, bigger U-joints, bigger locking hubs, but the same Dana 44 ring and pinion. Because believe it or not, Dana 44 ring and pinions are fairly durable. They actually can take some abuse, but the wheel ends are the part that breaks. So there was the, and that was a weight capacity. I think that's like the 4,800 pound axle. If you look at your line set ticket, that'll be what it's called out as. But yeah, so you could still get the closed knuckle or the big knuckle. But then the other thing we saw in 73, because 73 was just a crazy crossover year, is you did start to see the open knuckle axle coming through. So, and I think that's because of the Scouts. I think Dana Spicer was done making closed knuckle stuff, and they were pushing everybody was going to the open knuckle because they figured out ball joints and they figured out the turning radius and all that stuff. So you start seeing the introduction of the open knuckle, where instead of that big ball closed knuckle, now you've got the open knuckle. You can actually see the U-joint. So that was also another 73 update. And then finally you saw disc brakes in the 1010 Travelall and Pickup. They, and they didn't even come on full year. I think it came out towards the end of 73, mid 73, because I have 2 73 Travelalls. One has disc brakes and one doesn't. So I'm not sure what the designation was or why they changed, but that's something else you see, is that change from disc to drum or drum to disc in the half tons. And again, you see in 73, you see the trim change. They go to the small 3-inch trim like the Scout 2s have. They go spaghetti trim that goes all the way up the side, dang near to the door handles, all the way around. You saw the wood grain paneling, whatever. Again, the 73s had the same dash layout with the lighted indicator bars. You started to see FM radios became an option. A lot of that sort of stuff. 73, like I said, 73 is a tough year because you could have had so many versions of something. And it's really hard when people are buying parts and they say they have a 73. You really got to ask them a lot of questions about what they got and, all that. And it's tough for Josie sometimes when she's doing it because it's like there's just too many things. And then you go into 74. 74 is a huge change. Externally, not really. The grill changes to a still horizontal bars, but it bumps out in the middle. The hood bumps out a little bit, and the valance underneath the grill bumps out a little bit. But the rest of the body stays in the same shape. The tailgates change on the pickup beds. They have a different latch style. Oh, and then the other thing, the 73 and 4 era, the Wagon Master. Someone's crazy idea about taking a Travelall and cutting the roof off of it and making it into a super short bed pickup to haul fifth wheels or something. It sounded great on paper, but then you go to do it and the bed is too short. You put a fifth wheel hitch over the axle where it's supposed to be, the fifth wheel runs into the back of the cab. So they had like these offset hitches, and they had this funny thing you did with the tailgate so that you could leave it halfway open to clear the fifth wheel hitch. It really was a poorly thought of and executed idea. I've had several over the years. There's one in the yard right now. I think they're ugly. I don't like them. They're just not I don't know. They don't do anything for me, and I feel bad every time I see one on the road. So that was 73. That was a weird changeover for them. But so 74, like I was saying, you got the different grill, but otherwise they're unchanged. Still has the small trim, spaghetti trim, different colors. The dash changes a little bit more. They added an optional clock. That sort of stuff changed up some. But then you see the chassis changes big time. The frame changes. It gets wider. The engine placement. They actually move the engine back in the frame, do side mount motor mounts with rear dump manifolds. This big long fan shroud. The steering changes a little bit. The axles in the 3/4 tons see disc brakes, and they use a crazy rotor that's obsolete now, you can't get, but it has this huge hat, big offset rotor. They use caliper stands that look suspiciously like Scout 2 caliper stands, and then they use Scout 2 calipers. So, yeah, the disc brakes is a nice update, but man, using the same calipers you used on your half-ton or lighter, SUV is kind of a weird move for such a heavy-duty company. But whatever, they seem to stop pretty good. But one thing I thought was funny is that in the 1 tons, the 1300, or I'm sorry, the 200 and up, is they still kept that Dana 70 front axle with the big knuckles and the giant drum brakes. Because International really made a big jump from their 3/4 tons to their 1 tons. They really meant it. Like, there was no screwing around. When you went to a 1-ton International, you had the RA15, you had the Dana 70 front or Dana 70 rear, depending on how you were optioned. The frames were thicker, the spring packs were thicker. Like, there was just so much different. The frames had different bracing in them for the steering box. Just crazy differences in the 1 tons. But you started seeing that in the 74 and 5s. They also changed the model numbers. They went from 1210, 1110 to 150 and 200. And then there was no 300 or 400. It went from 200 to 500, even though you could have had a 200 with that Dana 70 front and the heavier frame and all that. So it was just a different, you could tell they were really trying hard to get their shit together and just couldn't do it in 74 and 5. That's when you saw the AMC 401 was replacing the 392 in the half-ton versions, because if I remember right, there was a 392 shortage, and so instead of wasting 392s on half-tons, they were putting the 401 in there and then saving the 392s for the pickups and medium-duty trucks that were getting a lot of those. A lot of school buses out there with 392s. So you saw that. And then in 75, they were pretty much exactly the same, except they made a change. They went from 150s to 100s, I believe. And then the 200 stayed the same. So the bodies were the same. You saw some more emissions equipment come in. Starting in 73, you started seeing the Goldbox ignition system, which was the Holley, magnet inside the distributor, and it triggered the Goldbox that was mounted on the firewall. And if you left it on too long, if you left your key on too long, you'd melt all the epoxy out of the Goldbox, and it would run down your firewall, and then the Goldbox would burn up, and you would stop. Ignition would die. The Goldbox was a terrible. I shouldn't say terrible, because I've had Goldbox systems last my entire ownership of the vehicle, and then I've had other Goldbox systems fail 3 times in 2 years. And so it's the Goldbox was really, it was hit or miss. It was probably fine back in the old days when it was supported, but now it's different. So yeah, there were other changes. The tailgate mechanism and the Travelalls changed in 73. Just differences. It's all subtle. Most to the casual observer, they don't really notice, the armrest location or, whatever. Like it's just real minor details. And, so it's really just those big external cues, like the trim location and the trim width and the grill style and that kind of thing. That's the giveaways. The C-Series rust problem was so bad. I think International tried to correct that in the Ds, and I think the Ds don't have as bad a rust problem. The cab corners will still rust. The D's biggest problem is the windshield frame. There's just no paint on the header above the windshield on the inside, and so it starts getting moisture in there from the hot and cold cycling, and then it starts rusting from the inside out, and it rots that window frame above the windshield. And then the inner fenders where the hood hinges bolt to. Those rust out and fail. That's pretty common on them as well. So those are the two big rust points on a D series, is that hood hinge and then above the windshield. Otherwise, I mean, really, they're pretty all right. I've seen Travelettes rust out in the middle where the middle body mounts are under the floor. They'll rust there, but I mean, not as bad as everybody thinks. They definitely don't have the cowl rust that the C's did. They do, it can rust in there, but it's not nearly as bad. But yeah, I mean, I was always wondering what they would look like if they continued on. There were rumors that, they were going to use Dodge pickups or something to help keep the pickup line going. But, I don't know if that happened or not. I've seen some artist renderings of like 78 Travelalls, and I am so grateful that they did not get made because they are ugly, ridiculously ugly. So, I'm glad that they stopped making pickups when they did, when they were still classy looking and, and stylish and all that, before they got completely out of control. Because we all know what the late 70s did to the auto market. Every manufacturer just had gaudy cars and trucks by, the late 70s. So, yeah. Really, that's about it for the rundown on the D series. I probably missed some stuff, or jumped all over, so hopefully you guys could follow along. Hopefully it was semi-informative, and yeah, I don't know. I'm sure you'll let me know if I missed something. But anyways, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I apologize for the terrible setup this time, but hopefully I'll be better next time. So, and speaking of next time, till next time, I'm Dan from Binder Boneyard.